I think one of the kind of reflection on what I'm seeing a little bit as people adopt AI is that I do see some people saying, all right, I've got AI now, I can knock off at 2:00. Like I was able to, what previously took me 8 hours to do, I can do it in 5. So I'm calling it a day. I guess one of the things that kind of goes through my head with that is I think kind of going back to long-term, like historical things and how things play out is it's still always been the people that do the work, that ultimately and know how to use the tools and invest the time and develop themselves that go the furthest and achieve the most and perhaps have, more opportunities open up to them. So I do see a little bit, I hear, some of the things I hear and read, people saying, oh, it means we can knock off earlier. I don't know exactly, but one of my reflections would be like, just be conscious of, all right, it empowers you to do more. I still think it's going to be those who are going to learn the tools and invest and probably still work, perhaps similar hours to previous generations that are going to be able to do the most.
Welcome to another episode of the AI-Powered Accountant. I have with me today Derek Repp from Colfax. Welcome.
Thanks, Shanil. Great to be here.
Lovely to have you. So, just in terms of introducing yourself to the audience, do you mind briefly introducing yourself, your business?
Yep.
A bit about your story.
Sure.
Your journey in AI as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm one of the two co-founders of Colfax. We're a business that provides financial management, financial leadership to small, medium businesses. Founded the business about 12 months ago with my business partner, Emilio Chedida. And background is that we're both trained as accountants. I started my career. It started to feel a little bit crazy as I think about it. It's 20 years in the industry now.
Wow.
And kind of as we talk about AI and getting to this point, I was reflecting this past week when I started in accounting, we were still using hard copy print files out, audit files that were paper based. So this was in Los Angeles working in audit. And I look at where we're at today, and so we'll no doubt be chatting through some of that today. But I went through the worked as an auditor for a number of years, worked in financial planning and analysis for one of the large Australian banks, and then was in a mid-tier accounting firm for a number of years. But most recently, running Colfax. And it's a space that just really passionate about. I love working with businesses, giving them the financial transparency that allows them to run better businesses is the space we're in. So we don't do any tax, we don't do any compliance. It's entirely in the space of helping business owners and boards manage their finances better for their businesses.
Awesome, mate. Well, obviously, we've spent a bit of time, right, over the last year, and it's been really interesting to hear your journey and how you guys have sort of taken that plunge and moved into starting your own business. How's that journey been over the last 12 months?
It's been really exciting. I think we're still in the honeymoon period. Like, people that are ahead of us on the journey of starting something new, like yourself, a lot of them tell me that, at some point, some of the glitter wears off and you realize you're really in the trenches and you're still going. I don't think we've hit that yet. So I mean, we're coming up to a year in the space running Colfax, and I'm still loving it every day. Still find it really exciting. So it's been really good. It's maybe a little bit of a different journey from a lot of accountants. Like I think accounting, has a lot of things traditional about it. A lot of accounting firms have been around for decades, if not many hundreds of years. And I think starting something new is a little bit off the beaten path for a lot of accountants, but I certainly rate it. I've certainly enjoyed it.
That's thanks for sharing that, right? And I think spot on there because we work with a lot of accounting firms as well, and you have the more traditional accounting firms that just do the same things over and over again.
Sure.
But I love with you guys how you're there with a focus on helping businesses, right? Painting pictures with numbers. Right,
sure.
And that's business partnering to an extent, right? Like you're working with businesses to explain the numbers and work with them. So, really excited to see where you guys are going to go, and I'm sure there's big things ahead. So, let's talk a bit about AI. Right? Obviously, both of us being accountants, even when I started off, it was there was a fair bit of paper involved, and then it was, Excel, and Excel was awesome, and tax systems, and it's evolving right now, right? And I feel like AI now will play an important part in accounting in the next 24 to 36 months, right? So we want to be on the front foot here.
Sure.
So right now, as a business owner, and as an accountant as well, I'm assuming you're a little bit hands-on in the tools as well.
Yep.
How are you leveraging AI right now? And what are the tools and how
sure. So I guess, tell about how we've been using AI over the last, 12 months. The first one I think is, in terms of generative AI being able to help us write and communicate better. I think that's the first, and I think that's probably the area that a lot of people have already adopted AI in. And I guess the reminder, what comes to mind for me in that space is that so much being an accountant is actually relational, and it's actually your ability to communicate, like getting the numbers put together, like that from the outside, that's what a lot of people associate with accounting. But I actually think being a good accountant is about being able to communicate well, being able to connect with people, being relational, but then knowing the numbers really well and being able to communicate them. And I think what I'm seeing with AI, is that ability to be able to refine your thoughts, be able to articulate yourself more clearly in the written word. So, obviously with writing emails, I mean, that's a very common one, something, sometimes you kind of wrestle over an email for quite a large amount of time. These days, if you've got the idea, you know what you want to say, you've got the AI there to help you, get that out, articulate that. So that's one. I think the research is another one that's really significant. And for me, it's one of the reasons why I actually think this is one of the most exciting times to be in the workforce in accounting, I guess, specifically for myself, but more generally, I think it's just an exciting time to be in the workplace. If I look at the research side, I mean, there's a lot of, accounting pronouncements, there's accounting standards, etc. There's a lot of things you have to be across. And that, I mean, we're talking, I don't know, if you print it out, we're talking thousands or hundreds of thousands of pages, right? Yeah. And so a question will pop up regularly. Say something kind of regulatory related. As an accountant, what do I have to have in my engagement letter? Do I have to have this? That's kind of thing that would take you off course for a couple hours, as part of your day. You have to look into that. What's exciting is I can get to the bottom of those kind of questions in 2 to 3 minutes now, which I just find crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? Like it makes work so much more fun. Like that's the thing that often comes to mind for me right now is work is so much more fun right now. And AI is playing a big part of that that you don't have to spend the 2 or 3 hours trying to connect the dots, trying to drill in and say, well, hold on, is there another, another piece of relevant legislation or pronouncement that's going to contradict that I need to look into? You still verify everything, obviously, but you can very quickly find where you need to be. So that's segment one. So I guess the writing, I guess the research, a bit within our business. I do it less myself, but some of the code writing. So we use Microsoft Power BI for most of our reporting and analysis, and so that uses DAX code. In terms of writing that, the guys that I work with, that's been a huge AI has been a huge help to them on that front. So they want to try to get the reporting tool to do something. In the past, you'd spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. AI has been a big help on that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it doesn't always get it right, and it's still, but it's been a huge enabler, and it gives another resource for solving that kind of thing. So those are a few spaces where already we've been using AI a lot in the last 12 months.
That's really interesting, right? I think a really interesting piece that you mentioned was how we as accountants need to communicate well, and we forget about that sometimes, right? And as technology changes, the more transactional work will get done by technology, and it's even more important that we communicate clearly and speak in lingo that businesses understand as well.
Correct.
Right. What I really like about using AI for emails is if I like a particular type of way, I can feed the data to my AI model and teach it. And I can get it to respond back in my tone of voice as well.
Correct. Yes.
So that's really cool. So you're sort of customizing it, right? Yeah. And a lot of LLMs have that right now.
Yes.
The research thing is really important, and it's really interesting as well, because it can take large data and find your answers so quickly, and that's amazing, right? The problem some businesses find is there's no referencing, and you don't know where the information is coming from if you don't load the data in, right?
Yeah.
That's something that I'm working on right now. I've got like a POC, like a proof of concept, where I'm trying to build something, because we work with so many accounting firms to give them this tool with a lot of legislations and tax modules and everything involved. So it's a custom database. It's the data is secure. And it references. So now you can ask something, will go, hey, this is the GST legislation X, Y, and Z. Right?
Sure.
So that's really interesting. And so I agree with you. I think the research bit is really cool as well. And you guys do a lot of work with Power BI. That is awesome, and that is exciting. What are you seeing in terms of trends there? Are you seeing clients requesting for that sort of service? Because it doesn't sit in a typical wheelhouse in a lot of accounting firms.
Yeah, sure.
And you guys getting into that was sort of, your way of using technology, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To be applicable in how you represent data.
Yeah.
I'd love to touch on that. How are you using it right now, and do clients sort of want that?
Yeah. So, a lot of ways we could approach this. I guess if we look at the accounting profession, I mean, one of my observations on it is that the vast majority of the profession, at least in Australia, is very focused on the compliance side of the profession. So, we're talking about accounting. There's a lot of facets of accounting, and it's used in a lot of different areas. In Australia, I'd say the vast majority of accountants are working in something that's compliance driven, and tax being the big one. And after that, also audit, statutory reporting, etc. The space that we play in with Colfax, it is not regulatory driven. It's driven by the businesses wanting to understand their numbers better. And so if I start with that kind of as the premise, and this has been, you can say hundreds of thousands of years potentially, people have been running businesses trying to bring services, to meet a need, to address a pain point. And part of that is the financial transaction behind that. And so as soon as you're running a business, you are into accounting and finance, because every business has to have the dollars and cents behind it. And so that, I suppose the need that Colfax is addressing has been there for many, many years, you could say. So as long as there's been businesses, there's been people that have needed to understand whether or not the business is profitable, whether or not it's working for them. Now, I guess when we talk about today, and even say the last 10 years since Power BI has really come onto the scene, we're not trying to address a new problem, I think is the first thing I would say there, is that it's this problem that's been around for years. People have been trying to understand dollars and cents for a long time. We've found Power BI to be a very useful tool for that. And the better we've been able to use it, I think the better we've been able to answer those questions for our clients. And so, obviously with AI, and I mentioned being able to write some of the formula that goes in the background in terms of building that report. Yeah, that's been a real enabler. In terms of clients specifically asking for this, Power BI, sometimes they do. Sometimes, they've heard that it's a great tool for that. And some of the CFOs that we support are actually the ones who will reach out and are very curious. Say, looks like you guys have real expertise in this space, something we don't have in-house. So it's often supporting CFOs because they know it's there and they're curious about it. But I think getting to that kind of detailed technical level, for the most part, the users of our services, they're at the level where they're looking for the output. They've got the problem. They want to understand their finances better. They want to run a more profitable business usually. They want to mitigate, they want to manage the risks that they have in their business. And so they're saying, I need to understand my numbers better. You hear a lot of advisors say you need to know your numbers. It just happens that when you're sitting in our shoes as the technician, the person delivering that, trying to solve that problem, Power BI is a great tool. In our experience. And maybe just one thing I'd add to that. I'm saying it's a great tool, and it's the one that we've chosen to use. The reason we like it is it can just sit across so many different platforms, so many different data sources. So there's a lot of reporting solutions out there, but quite often they're a little bit captive to information coming, data being provided in a certain way or connecting to a certain system. The beauty of Power BI that we find, and there's other tools out there, I'll say, Tableau is another one, for example, is that ability to work across a lot of different data sources. it's a long answer to your question, Shanil.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, mate. And I think you and I were sort of chatting before as well this morning, and the customization of Power BI, like how a lot of accounting tools, like the larger ones you mentioned, they're sort of set in how they report. But the beauty of this is you can tailor this, right, to each business.
Yeah,
and that's a massive advantage. I think as you work with different industries as well, right?
Yes, correct.
So you can get the right data out. So
you can almost do both, right? Yeah, so you can have that kind of like standard, like, all right, here's kind of a standard reporting setup that, you can use Power BI, you plug in, different companies' data and do the same thing, but you're not then completely captive to just do it that way. When, I don't know, 1 out of the 3 companies you're doing that for says, actually, I need to be able to see it this way. That doesn't work for my business. Well, you can change it without breaking.
Yeah, you have the ability to do that,
You have the
right?
ability, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, in terms of talking a bit more about AI, right? And what are the trends or technologies that you're most excited about?
Sure.
I guess with AI, and are there any particular industries or sectors you believe would benefit significantly?
Sure. So maybe I'll start within Colfax, some of the things that I'm really excited about in this space. So the first one that really gets me excited, and as a new business, and we're about to start hiring, we're in the hiring process now to bring on our first employee. The thing that gets me really excited is the ability, is how we'll go about training those individuals in this new AI world. So a big part of being successful in any business, but certainly in the accounting profession and what we're trying to do, is being able to bring new employees up to speed, train them on what we do, train them on the Colfax way of doing things, getting them up to speed on what we have seen works really well in the past. And I mean, that includes like client relationship management, how we build 3-way modeling, as an example. Historically, that's quite a long process, taking somebody from walking in the door, maybe that person's got 2 or 3 years of experience in the profession. As I mentioned a moment ago, what we do is a little bit unique. It's not kind of in that compliance tax space. So we need to be able to bring people up to speed on what we do and kind of the niche in the market that we address. I think AI is going to significantly change how we do that. And so some of the tools that I'm quite attracted to at the moment are those that help develop learning pathways for employees. So I mentioned a moment ago, going back to my days of paper-based audit files. It's just crazy. So that kind of 20 years of experience and some of the things I've learned through the years of being in this profession, how can I then get that into a learning pathway? And I can kind of sit down and think about, if somebody's coming into this space, this financial planning and analysis space, here's all the things they're going to have to know over the next 2, 3, 4 years to develop to become a really good practitioner in this space. Now, if I'm trying, I can, with the time I have in my week, I can maybe train 1 or 2 people a week, that's a huge investment of time. I think with AI, I'm going to be able to get a lot more out of my head, out of my experience, build those pathways, collect the content both internally and externally. And so to then be able to provide to those individuals that come into our organization and take them up that curve much quicker. So the Colfax way of doing things, I'll be able to go from me and Emilio, us knowing what we do and how we do it, to being able to get, say in a couple of years' time, a team of 5 or 10 that are able to do this same thing that we know businesses are looking for. So that's the first. Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, that ability so that kind of goes down that pathway of AI agents. Is that space of setting up AI for a purpose that then kind of has a sequence of things that are needed for the input for desired output, and then the Gen AI be able to help us do that. So that's one. And
just on that, whilst we're talking about it, so that's interesting. So you're going to bring your first employee, and congrats, that's really exciting. What's the expectation? Is there an expectation that someone comes in with an understanding of AI? That's really interesting, right? Like, what is your expectation for someone coming?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and I think it's a great segue to the kind of the next area of AI I was going to tie that. So the way one of the big changes in the profession is how you get work done, right? And so if I use bookkeeping as an example, like bookkeeping used to be, well, you go right back, it was pen and paper, double entry accounting, recording. And so, bookkeeping, like it's even in the name, right? Nowadays, when you look at bookkeeping, it's all about being able to use technology well. Like, like the tech can in theory do most of it, most of the bank reconciling, for example. But what Emilio and I see in the space is there's actually a lot of people that really struggle to run those systems well. Like we see it across the small and medium businesses all the time, that actually things go really pear-shaped because the integration between systems, like, so for example, systems speaking into Xero, and all of a sudden you've got 1,000 unreconciled items from a source system. It's a real mess. So then going to your question, well, what's the skill? Like when we're out there hiring, I'm really looking for people that think about solving problems with the latest technology, and AI being one of those.
There you go.
Yeah, and so being able to find and meet people, and if I can find, my hope is to find the best talent out there and get them to join Colfax. But a big part of that, the skill set that I think is needed, is that ability to do, well, let's stay on the example of bookkeeping, to do bookkeeping well using technology. And at the moment, I've been doing a lot of interviewing the last couple of weeks. That skill set's actually harder to find than one might think. So there's a huge amount of excitement, hype around AI. But then I think, and this is often the case with a lot of new tech, when you actually go on the ground and you find out, well, what's actually happening? Are the people using this? Are they using it well? Are people trained on this? Can often be a very different story. And I think that's what I'm seeing at the moment, is that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like that skill set to be able to get, somebody would be able to give me the proper technical term for it, but just be able to get systems to talk to systems, and then being good at overseeing that and being able to identify when something's gone wrong in that automated bookkeeping process. I think that's a huge one at the moment.
So that's interesting. So I think what you're saying is the requirement for the modern accountant is to understand or have the fundamentals of accounting, but also be well versed in technology, and that's
spot on. Yeah,
mandatory, right?
Yeah.
It also goes to the point where back in the day, I'm a debits and credit guy, right? So every problem I solve, I'm like, it has to be solved because there is a debit, there's a credit. Accounting is easy in that sense, right? Like there's a debit, well, there's a credit somewhere.
Yes.
But new graduates and new accountants coming out of uni now, getting into this world of just technology and just clicking buttons, you tend to forget about the fundamentals.
Correct.
The T accounting and all that stuff, I used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you see that as an issue where, someone might be able to use technology, come in, just click a few buttons, that looks good, but actually understanding the fundamentals?
Yeah, I absolutely see that as one of the challenges in the industry right now, in that it goes back to, debits and credits. You got to, and I all the tech that's come and everything I've seen in the years I've been in the profession, I think, you could say it still comes back to debits and credits and knowing your debits and credits. And I think back to some of my professors at university that really drum that in. You're trying to figure out, well, what's gone wrong in the ledger? We'll take it back to your T accounts. I think that skill set is still really needed. So how you get that without, as it's somebody new to the profession, especially where AI is taking, tech is taking a lot of that off of us. Yeah, I think the individual's perhaps still going to have to work to find ways to get experience and think through when they're solving problems, even if they're using tech, what's actually going on with what the tech is doing in terms of your double entry accounting. So I think that's, hugely relevant.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Look, just having that right mix. Even when because we hire heaps of accountants within our business, it's looking at what's important to me is finding the right people. So there's two aspects, right, in hiring. In my view, you've got the technical side of things, and then you've got the behavioral, right?
Yes.
The technical part of it you can teach typically, especially if you have the right behavioral aspects. If they're teachable, coachable, right attitude, you can learn.
Yeah.
So as we've gone through this journey, Typically I would hire someone that's highly technical, but now I am sort of actually weighted more behavioral because
Correct.
in this day and age, it's all about being agile and learning new skills. I've heard this in so many podcasts that, a new skill that we learn right now, it expires in 3 years.
Correct.
Okay, because technology will change so much.
That's right.
The climate changes so much. So what's really important is your ability to learn and be adaptable.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a higher weighting now in my books. And if you have the right person with the right skills and the right attitude, you can learn the technical stuff, right? Because you and I, you start off, you don't know anything about accounting, you go to uni and you work and you start learning. So
I completely agree, and that's one of the things as we're going through hiring right now that we've been talking about, and with the this agency that we're working with to try to find the right talent, is that's the big thing we're looking for. So the technical thing, we still need people that are trained as accountants, we need people that have done the training and have that. But then I would kind of just say there, on equal weight, if not higher weight now, is some of those behavioral things. And then, within that space, you talk about like optimism, drive, there's all sorts of different things. I think the thing within the behavioral side that is really the big desire now is that ability to learn and keep learning and solve problems. Because the problem, 1 year into the job, we're going to have new problems, new technical challenges, I guess you could say, that are going to have to be solved. And we need people that are able to solve those and have the appetite. And so some of the individuals I've worked with in the last 4 or 5 years that I think have been most successful in our current environment are the ones who are just really curious, love trying to solve the problems, and know how to use YouTube to find the answer. That's actually one of my biggest indicators of somebody that I think is onto it. And I often ask, I'll give this away, people that I'm interviewing, I'll ask, well, how do you like to learn? Like, when you run into a problem, how do you solve it? And I think a good answer, the answer that I think is a signal of somebody who thinks the way I think works in this age, is they'll say, I go to YouTube, I go to, was it GitHub, Overflow, there's all these different places. People that know how to go find the answers, I think, are really valuable right now.
Yeah, I mean, just being solution focused, right? And being like, how can I solve this problem?
Yeah.
What are the tools I have right now? And at this age, you're right. I love YouTube. You can find anything online, right?
Correct.
YouTube, but all these tools available now that we didn't have. Interesting. So if you're gonna apply for a job at Colfax, you might want to listen to this podcast.
You got one question you can expect.
Okay, awesome. Now, in terms of the clients you work with as an accounting firm, I'm assuming there's a variety of different industries, right?
Yep.
Does the question around AI come up? Do you see them using AI in the way they work? Is it certain industries that have sort of adopted it a bit?
Yeah. In terms of the clients that we work with, I haven't seen it hugely change what they're doing yet. I mean, I think most people are using it, for trying to find answers to questions, etc. Some of the areas, going back to one of your earlier questions, like where do I think there's massive potential, and where do I get excited about AI? I think a lot. I'm really excited about the health, human services, and kind of education spaces. I have a lot of family and friends that are, let's use education for example, and the amount of compliance and the amount of record keeping that these individuals are having to do in some of these industries. People go into nursing because they want to be in the care space. They want to give good care, and something they're passionate about. I think similarly with teaching. My wife's a teacher, and they go into these spaces to do those things and do them well. But what I so often hear from individuals in those professions is there's so much paperwork, so much form filling. Every little incident has to be documented. A lot of people are burning out in those industries, and so I actually get quite excited about the potential for AI, to reduce and change how people spend their day. My understanding is, if there's something that happens on the playground and there's an incident, you got to document it and report it. Well, and so I hear from teachers, they're coming home in the evening and they're having to sit down, pull out the laptop at home and fill in these things. I sit there and think, well, that's the kind of thing where the incident happens on the playground. You can basically be walking away from, going to your next appointment, your next class as a teacher, and be able to basically do the incident report in 2 minutes on the walk, I would think. And an AI agent could solve that. And likewise, we do a lot of work with Colfax. We've done a lot of work in aged care. It's an area that we work in, and I see what the registered nurses are having to do at the moment, and I just think there's huge potential for us to get some of those frontline caregivers, educators back to doing what they want to do, and that's where I think society more broadly benefits. If we can get those people in those spaces, spending less time filling out forms and burning out, and more time doing what they're passionate about, that gets me pretty excited, because that changes society for the better. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting you mentioned that, right? Because speaking to a lot of accountants, there's this fear that AI is going to replace accounting, right? I guess when you go back to the 80s when the computers came out, everyone was like, oh, that's this, I'm going to lose my job. All those bookkeepers, accountants. But you see a shift in jobs. You see the job ads for bookkeepers go down. But you see the job ads for, say, an analyst now go up.
Sure.
Right? So technology took away some of that manual intervention, and it creates a new job. And now you can take this data and use it a bit more wisely. So I think as we go through these changes in technology over the years, we are just doing more of the things up on the value chain.
Correct.
And the more transactional work is gradually getting taken away.
Yeah.
Even moving out of accounting, it's something like, for example, a horse and carriage. Yeah. Like, it would take me 3 hours to travel from A to B. But, next you have a car, and suddenly, okay, it's taking me 15 minutes.
Correct. Yep.
So I'm not spending my time traveling. I'm spending less time traveling, so I have more time for other things.
Yes, correct.
That's how the industries get better and, drive more efficiency.
Yeah, and so once one problem is solved with technology or research breakthroughs, what history shows us is, it just allows us to move on to the next thing, and so, I think obviously there's lots of discussion of potential job losses, but I think part of what you say is correct, is that it's going to be a change. The new jobs are going to be created. People are going to change the way they work. I think what I'm saying is that people still want the relationship contact. And if I think about this even from my perspective as a buyer of services within Colfax, so if I think about we need help with our marketing, we need help with HR, for example. I go online, I use AI, I do a bit of research, and there's all this tech out there. It's kind of overwhelming, well, which one's the best one and which one would make sense. Where I always get to is I want to hire somebody that can do that. So I want to hire somebody who's in the marketing space. He or she can go, do all the tools. They can manage all of that. Same with HR. And I think that's what I feel is going to play out, and is playing out in the accounting space as well, is that, there's still massive demand for accountants. And I think there's going to continue to be massive demand for accountants, but the way they deliver the services is changing. Obviously, we're already seeing that. I think the thing that's interesting about accounting is that we have a talent shortage at the moment, right? So we're coming into this period where there might be some changing demand in the accounting profession, but we have to remember we're starting at a point where there's far more work in the profession than we've got people to address that need. I mean, you go talk to any accounting firm, their biggest challenge is by far finding people coming through. The pipeline of people coming into the profession is so thin on the ground. So I think we just specifically within accounting, we just have to keep that in mind. At the same time that things are going to shift, and some aspects of the profession, there'll be less demand for. We're starting at a point where we've got far fewer people in the profession than we need.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that, Derek, because what we are finding is there's this talent shortage in accounting, right? There's less accountants coming out of uni, less of them wanting to work in accounting. So I feel like technology has come at the right time now, because accounting firms can't really keep up with the demand, right? And it'll just change the way they work. It'll be more business partnering. And you're right, like, we are humans. We still want to work with humans, right? And where you can really add value as an accountant is having those sit downs with your clients, sitting down, strategizing, understanding those numbers, explaining those numbers. And the expectation around an accountant is also changing, because the processing of BASs and those transactional stuff is there's no value associated with it. It's a compliance piece, right?
Yeah.
And businesses are like, yeah, sure, you do that. I'll pay you for that.
Yeah.
But how can you help me grow my business? How can you help me structure this business for an exit or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think technology, funny enough, has come through at the right time
It feels
to
like
sort of meet the demands of this shortage of talent.
That's right. On that pipeline, I'd be curious if you have a thought. I mean, what's the role of university education these days for the accounting profession? Any reflections, any thoughts on it?
Mate, I just feel like, the curriculums really haven't changed, right? Over the years in accounting, right?
Yeah.
And it's because we are so focused on, compliance legislation, fundamentals. Universities will have to adapt and change and have to have technology components included now, right, in the curriculum.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, we've been having this discussion actually recently as well around what are we learning in school? What are we learning in university? Are those skills going to help me get a job? Are those skills going to enable me to be the best version of myself in the corporate world?
Yeah.
And there's a gap. And, people are going through the YouTube and they are using all these other tools around them to educate themselves. So I think there's definitely an opportunity. And, I'm really keen to see where that space goes.
Yeah, I think it's one of the bigger questions on my mind. Like some of the things we've talked about, I kind of have a feel, I have some thoughts on, but one that it's just a big question mark for me still is, what's the role of the university education for people coming into our profession, but also others as well?
Yeah, that's a cool question.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll finish up with a couple of questions, Derek. I think we've spoken about a majority of these. I had a few things penciled down. If there was one key message or a lesson about AI you'd like our listeners to sort of take away from this conversation, right? If you had a young accountant listening to this, looking to take that leap, looking to work for, a firm like yourself, what advice would you give them? Coming into a new industry with all these changes, I can understand it could be quite overwhelming, right? But you've seen all this, right? You come from paper to now you're working with AI. You've seen it all. If there's some key pieces of advice you can give that.
But I think the first thing I would start with is this is an exciting time to be in the workforce and an exciting time to be in the profession. Like I think it is far more exciting to be here today and what you can do with the technology than when I was given my red pen and was working on hard copy files, and a lot of the frustration that it has. Like I just think it's a much more exciting time. And I guess why do I say that? Or like what in particular, what I suggest a young person be looking at? I think it's thinking in terms of what you can envision, what ideas you can come up with to say, you know what, a piece of tech could fix this, or there's a better way of doing this. Historically, people have had great ideas. Most of them, I'm talking like probably 99% or more, are only ever an idea because it's actually the development of that idea that's too hard. Like people don't have the resources, they don't have the skill sets, they don't have access to what they need to develop that idea. I sit here today and I look and I think with what I see with AI, I'm excited because we're in a period in history where if you kind of have the idea, you likely have the avenues to develop that. And I think of that a lot, and we haven't really touched on it yet, but kind of app development, I think that's one of the things that's going to be really exciting for small and medium businesses in particular. They've got something that they do that's part of their process, that's part of their DNA about how they do what they do, but they've been restricted by the resources that they have, or it's been a painful process, something that they've had to do manually historically. I think we're in a period where if you can identify that problem, there's a much greater opportunity to find a way to develop a solution in-house or working with experts in the space to be able to deliver something. So that's one of the things that gets me really excited, is that as a young person coming into this profession, there's just so much you can do. You can solve a lot more problems than you ever could because you've got more resources at your fingertips than any generation before.
That's really I mean, it's interesting how you use the word exciting, right? Because a lot of people are afraid as well, right? So I think that's really important because we are living in a stage right now where things are exciting, right? Like things are changing, and as a younger person, you can probably adapt a bit quicker as well in terms of change. And back in the day when you join an accounting firm, you've got university, no experience. You've got these accounting partners that have all this experience. There's a big gap. But now you come in with your own flavor and your ability to use technology, and you sort of bridge that gap a bit. You're bringing in a set of skills that probably some of the older partners and the senior people in business probably don't have. And suddenly you can leverage technology to sort of position yourself a little bit higher in a firm as well, and add value, right? Solve problems.
Exactly.
And I think for sure, the accounting industry there'll be a lot of tech products, AI products that will come out. We're building a couple of things ourselves in the background and really excited to sort of roll them out. And I think over the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be some amazing new things coming in. And you're right, we should be excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the kind of reflection on what I'm seeing a little bit as people adopt AI is that I do see some people say, all right, I've got AI now, I can knock off at 2 o'clock. Like I was able to, what previously took me 8 hours to do, I can do it in 5. So I'm calling it a day. I guess one of the things that kind of goes through my head with that is I think kind of going back to long-term, like historical things and how things play out is it's still always been the people that do the work, that ultimately and know how to use the tools and invest the time and develop themselves that go the furthest and achieve the most and perhaps have, more opportunities open up to them. So I do see a little bit, I hear, some of the things I hear and read, people saying, oh, it means we can knock off earlier. I don't know exactly, but one of my reflections would be like, just be conscious of, all right, it empowers you to do more. I still think it's going to be those who are going to learn the tools and invest and probably still work, perhaps similar hours to previous generations that are going to be able to do the most. So,
yeah, I mean, we have this conversation all the time as well, because we've got a remote workforce as well. My view is the onus is on the manager, right? If the manager understands what can and can't be done, then say you're 40 hours and they're not allocating the right amount of work and they're aware that technology is going to drive efficiency, the onus is on the manager going, hey, actually there's 10 jobs this week, 7 jobs. I mean, I know people that have automated everything in their lives, and they get their job done in 10 hours a week instead of 40. But you have the opportunity to spend the rest of that time driving more change or adding
correct
organization, right? It comes down to the personality as well, I guess. But that's a really interesting point, right? Because there is efficiency getting drawn out of this process.
And I think some of it, not necessarily within the context of being an employee, but just as the individual and I suppose trying to develop yourself and achieve what you can. Do you approach that as, all right, I now have these tools and it allows me to do these additional things, and therefore I'm going to invest the time and develop and use those, and talking about outside of an employment context, or is it, just to I suppose step away and take the afternoon off? I guess my thought there is that because everybody's going to have access to the tools, I think it's going to be those who still are the ones who invest in and develop it and use it are going to be the ones that are going to go the furthest. So,
that's a great point.
So
awesome, mate. Well, I think that's a wrap. It's been really interesting getting your thoughts and views, and really I've been watching Colfax grow from the sidelines, and it's an exciting journey, and I'd love to continue to partner with you guys.
Likewise.
Right, so appreciate you coming down from Sydney and making this podcast, and all the best.
My pleasure. Thanks, Shanil.
Thanks, Matt. See you.